I was very close with my grandpa growing up and spent a lot of time with him. He died when I was 19, and a few years later, I was looking at pieces of property. I thought I could afford an acre or two. I had over $30K saved up by the time I was 21. Between my parents and me, I decided to purchase a piece of property from them that they got from his estate as part of their inheritance along with other property as well. My mom wanted some type of down payment, so she asked how much money I had. I told her, and she said, well, give me $30K. I gave my mom the down payment and made payments for the next 6 or 7 years, like you would pay for a mortgage. I started off giving her $1,000 a month and increased as I got better jobs. Last year, I was giving her $2,500 a month. Last year, someone stole from the property, i.e., a large bulldozer. I told my parents I wanted the property in my name after paying for it for 6 or 7 years. I said I'd pay the remainder that I had owed against the property. My mom wouldn't tell me how much I paid her over the years. Then she told me, oh, it was X amount, until we added on the excavator, which my dad decided he wanted to buy an excavator for working out at my property, but I didn't get to find out I was paying for at least half of until he purchased it like a year later. I don't recall exactly, but I think it was like 69 grand is what she said I had paid to her at the time, but it seemed quite low to me, especially now in hindsight. I went into the bank and got bank statements of every check I had given my mom over the past several years, and it added up to $113,000, which was over 90% of what I agreed to pay for the property. I told them that's what I had paid to them, but separately, and my dad said, well, you realize that property is worth a hell of a lot more than $125, and I can sell it for a lot more than that. You're just entitled like all kids nowadays, just jealous of what their parents have. Don't worry about it either. The property will end up in your name or you'll get your money back. My mom said after I accused them of stealing from me, well, you realize I didn't get anything after my dad died. Just those 2 properties and the $30K you gave me is long gone. Then said, well, we can't put the property in your name. It needs to stay in the family. You don't have a will or anything. What happens if you died in a car crash or something? Long story short, the majority of people I talked to about it just said to try and get my money back from them and let them sell it or whatever. I didn't want the property to be sold after I'd worked out there cleaning it up for years. So I moved about 15 hours away and went no contact. I got a lawyer. After about 4 months with a lawyer, they decided to sign the paperwork to put the property in my name. Not the a-hole, and it seems like maybe you've learned a few good lessons moving forward. Don't do any kind of large transaction without a detailed contract. Don't do business with family. Not the a-hole, and way to go in not letting them get away with screwing you out of all that money. What they did is gross, and no one can blame you if you remain no contact with them. Not the a-hole. Your parents tried to rob you blind, and your mom openly admitted to trying to defraud you. Should have your lawyer look at your grandpa's will to make sure your parents didn't do anything shisty. Edit. One way to spot toxic parents is they call their children and others entitled. Like, how dare anyone think they are owed something by me, and think it only goes one way. Everyone is entitled to something. The problem is when people are over-entitled. You are entitled to what you paid for. Make sure you keep up with your taxes, OP, and visit your property regularly. Check property squatters' rights laws and protect your property rights. My dad died when I was 2, and my mom raised me as a single mom with a series of boyfriends and eventually a new husband. She has always lived obsessed with money, and nowadays lives off of her half of my dad's inheritance, which she invested in real estate. With my half of the inheritance, she bought a house and an apartment. She administered my estate since I was a minor. We lived in the house, her husband, her, and I, and she rented the apartment to pay for my private school. Meanwhile, I'm not sure what she did with her half, but I know she bought an apartment which she also rented out. For years, it was suggested to me by my relatives that my mother and her husband lived rent-free in my house, the one she bought with my half of the inheritance, for years and years, when she should have rented my house and saved that money for me until I came of age. My mother told me that since I was also living in that house, she owed me nothing, and that house was better spent on me growing up in a nice house. I also told her that she should have paid for my school herself, instead of paying it with the rent from the apartment that belonged to me. But she said that there was nothing wrong with using my half of the inheritance to pay for my education, and that sounds reasonable. I know being a single mom was not easy for her. She only remarried when I was 11. By saying all this, I basically suggested that she robbed me. Am I the a-hole for saying that my mom and her husband owe me money for all the years that the 3 of us lived together in the house that I inherited from my dad? You're the a-hole. You come across as incredibly entitled. It sounds as though your mother made some sound investment choices, which allowed you to have a decent upbringing. It's a lot more than a lot of other children get, especially after the death of a parent. You're the a-hole. She bought the house with your share, yes, and then you lived in it. Meanwhile, Who do you think paid for all your food, healthcare, school supplies, clothes, birthday and Christmas presents, vacation trips, etc.? You're the a-hole. She raised you, and she didn't blow your inheritance. She invested it in an asset, which has likely significantly increased in value, and used that to better support you. Do you think you should have to pay her for your expenses? Food, entertainment, etc. Edit. Both properties were given to me on my 18th birthday. I continued to live with them in the house until I was 21. When I moved out, my mom and her husband also moved out, so I could rent out the house and have an income of that rent. Edit 2. Just to be clear, as to what the issue was, we both had an inheritance. She bought us both properties with our respective halves of that inheritance. 3 of us, mom, stepdad, me, lived in mine while she rented out hers. I said we should have all lived in hers while renting out mine and saving that money for when I was an adult. I don't think this means I'm right. I just want us all to be on the same page. As for my relatives, it wasn't my father's family. I lost touch with him after my father died. It was my grandmother on my mother's side. She helped raise me, but she and my mom got on terribly because of their own crap. I would spend weekdays at my mom's and weekends at my grandma's. Grandma suggested that my stepdad was living rent-free in the house that belonged to me and got a new car, improved his life at my expense. I had a therapist that agreed. My sister-in-law, Diane, was a nurse in the Pacific Northwest. She lived in a very high cost of living city. 15 years ago, she bought herself a small apartment in a new development. It took about 2 years to build. In that time, the price of apartments in that building went up by about 30%. She didn't sell it because it was perfect for her. Unfortunately, she was diagnosed with breast cancer about 2 years after she took possession. She really didn't want to move back to Minnesota, so she asked her family for money to keep up with the mortgage. None of them had the money, and her mom really wanted her to move home. I was friends with her before I married her sister. Just friends, nothing more. She asked me for help. I bought the apartment off her. I took over the mortgage. I didn't charge her rent. I paid all the taxes and condo levies. She got enough money from her insurance and a side hustle to live there. My wife knew we were helping her, but we didn't say anything because her mom was pissed that she didn't move home after her diagnosis. Diane passed away last month. She had a hard life for the last decade, but she was happy. When her mom got a copy of the will, she was furious. The apartment is worth a lot of money now. It's in a great building in a good neighborhood. She was expecting the apartment to sell and for there to be money to split up amongst all of her grandchildren. Diane never married and never had kids. Mother-in-law found out about the deal I made with Diane. My wife and I own the apartment outright. After we clear it out and get rid of all her stuff, we're going to rent it out. The income it will generate will pay for our retirement in a while. And when we sell it, our kids will have a nice nest egg to help them. But now my mother-in-law told everyone how we took advantage of her daughter in her time of need and stole her apartment, and how Diane would be upset if she knew that we were not sharing all the money from the apartment. It is really starting to bug my wife, and she's been saying we should sell it and help out all the nephews and nieces. I showed her a spreadsheet of all our costs for the apartment. If I subtract all my costs and all my lost opportunities for investment, when everything is said and done, the 8 nibblings might get $3,000 each. I said if she wanted, we could give them each that much to get her family to drop it. Her family says that it's BS, and that we should sell the apartment and split it equally. I said I would be willing to do that in return for each of them paying 1/3 of the money I invested over the last 10 years. They don't think that's fair. My wife is upset and her family is upset, and I'm just trying to be fair to myself. I spent 10 years giving up other investments and toys for myself and helped out Diane instead. And now I'm getting crapped on. Full disclosure, I knew it was a good investment. It wasn't fully altruistic. Not the a-hole. The family is just upset because they assumed Diane left them an estate they could split amongst themselves. But that's just greedy. You made it possible for Diane to live independently as long as possible. And the house is your property, not part of Diane's estate. If her family members had chipped in to support her during the last 10 years, perhaps there would be an estate worth fighting over. Not the a-hole. Your in-laws sound really greedy. If it's all about helping family, why didn't they help Diane out financially when she needed their support? They didn't support her when it wouldn't benefit them. But now that she's gone, they expect some financial gain from her death? I know grief does weird things to people, but that's just such a screwed up mindset. Not the a-hole. Honestly, just tell the truth. None of them were there to help her financially when she was sick and dying, and now they are vultures, trying to profit from her corpse. They should go take a long, hard look at themselves and why they believe their lives should be made better because of her death. You didn't profit from her death. You bought real estate and took care of a friend in the process. I, female 25, have been with my boyfriend, Adam, male 26, for over a year. He's so wonderful and adores my family and loves visiting them regularly. There was an accident about a week ago while me and Adam were visiting my parents for dinner. His stuff, his phone, car keys, medications, and $200 has gone missing. We looked all over the house, but couldn't find the stuff. My 18-year-old sister was in her room the entire time, except for a few minutes to ask what we were looking for. Me and Adam had to go home in an Uber, still feeling shaken up and confused. Adam kept stressing out about his medication, which is the most valuable among the stuff he lost, and had a hard time getting replacement for it. I went back to my parents the next day to continue looking for Adam's missing stuff, and found it in my sister's room, the only place we didn't look. I was dumbfounded. I waited for her to come back from school and confronted her. My mom started making excuses instead of asking my sister why she took Adam's stuff. I shamed her and said I was going to tell Adam and will absolutely support him if he decides to take legal action since the $200 wasn't returned. Mom freaked out and begged me to lie to Adam and say I found his stuff in the bathroom cabinet instead of saying my sister stole it, but I refused. My sister broke down crying, saying if I tell Adam, I'll ruin her relationship with him, but I believe he needed to know the house he enters isn't safe for him. Mom said she couldn't believe I'm willing to encourage Adam to take legal action and ruin my sister's chance to her college application. My parents said they'd cut me off if this happens, and this was the last time we talked. 2 days ago, Adam told me Mom called saying they found his stuff in the bathroom cabinet and to give it to me, but I was keeping it. I was stunned. Okay, first of all, the stuff is in my possession, yes, but I was waiting on Mom and Dad to pay the $200 so I could have my sister return them to my boyfriend along with the other stuff and apologize, hoping we'd work this out without involving authorities. But Mom went ahead of me and told the story she made up to Adam. I laid out the facts to him and told him what really happened, that my sister stole his stuff, and that despite being ashamed of Mom and sister, I still gave them the opportunity to resolve this peacefully. Then I told him I support him in whatever decision he makes. Adam was in dismay and very upset. He confronted my parents and they kept denying. Mom was furious. She kept crying, saying I failed to do them this one small favor, to tell a white lie to Adam, but I just ruined the entire family's relationship with him, and anything that comes out of this is my fault after making them look like liars, and my sister like a vicious thief. My whole family are in conflict, and are shaming me for exposing my sister and making a fuss over a small mistake. I haven't seen Adam since the day he found out. Neither parties are happy, and I'm being blamed and accused of escalating things. Everyone sucks here, almost. I'm going with you're a slight a-hole because you didn't return the stuff to Adam and tell him what happened the day you found it. Your family is a pile of major a-holes. Your sister needs the consequences which are due to her. Adam is not an a-hole. Yeah, I don't get why OP didn't immediately give him his stuff. That's just a weird choice, especially medication. And OP's sister didn't make a small mistake. She stole from boyfriend, came out, asked what they were looking for, and when she knew it was the stuff she stole, she just slunk back into her room. She knowingly stole all of his things, and the parents are like, no big deal. And Mom and her lies. What the hell? Someone in the family still shoved it in the bathroom and took the $200. What is wrong with this entire family? Everyone sucks here, except Adam. Your family sucks for obvious reasons, but so do you. You should have told him the moment you returned and located his stuff, and given him the opportunity to take whatever action he needed to. The truth of it is that you broke his trust by waiting for the money and then hopefully sweeping it under the rug. Your delay and lack of honesty meant that your mother was able to feed him the narrative that painted you in the worst light. Of course he doesn't trust you again, or at least shouldn't. You are acting just like your entitled family, no matter what your intent was. My mother, S., retired a couple years ago and has taken up flipping things on eBay or Depop as a hobby. She does not do this with the intent to hit it big. She just enjoys the hunt and running into cool pieces. Usually she finds these things in estate sales, thrift stores, etc. If she sees something she thinks I will like, she will send it to me. A month or so ago, she found a beautiful space-age style lamp at an estate sale in a rural part of the state she lives in. She paid something like $200 for it and sent a picture of it to me as she often does. She is an avid viewer of Antiques Roadshow and had a hunch that it was worth some money. The lamp fits the mid-century modern style of my apartment, and she brought it to me when she visited my city the following week. Not a week later, a post appeared on the Facebook page my mom found the estate sale through from the family that hosted the estate sale. It was quite a sad post, mentioning that the lamp was an heirloom, and it had been accidentally sold by the contractor they used to run the sale. They offered a cash reward for the return of the lamp. Naturally, after seeing this post, we did some research and found out that the lamp was worth several $1,000s. Although I did love the lamp, I have a good amount of car debt that the sale would essentially clear out. After some deliberation, me and my mom decided to sell it, and we split the profits in a way we found equitable. Soon after the sale, my mother was messaged on Facebook by someone accusing her of being the one who bought the lamp. My mom is relatively unique looking, so we figured they had scanned the Facebook group for someone matching her description. The message was kind, but pleading. We have not responded. Edit. The message the family sent went like this, in a nutshell. We believe it was you who bought our lamp. We would appreciate opening a conversation about returning the lamp for our discussed reward. We hope you have not decided to sell the lamp, but if you already have, we feel entitled to some of the money so we can hopefully buy it back. Am I the a-hole for keeping the lamp profits? Honestly, yes, you're the a-hole. If you sold it before you knew, it would be different. But you knew it was important enough to them that they offered a reward for it. You intentionally chose to make a buck instead of doing the right thing. Were you legally wrong? No. But morally, you're the a-hole. Karma. You're the a-hole. Sure, legally you're in the clear, but it was obvious that this heirloom was sold by mistake, and you consciously chose to flip it anyways. It would have been one thing if you were actually ignorant of the situation, but you found out the truth before you sold it. You could have been kind, but instead you were selfish. Not the a-hole, and I mean this legally, morally, etc. This was an estate sale run by professionals. The way those sales work is that the family is required to remove or lock up everything from the premise that they desire to keep. This is not a one-time deal either. They are supposed to do this before the estate sale company even starts, and then they will often have them come through again before posting pictures. These people had ample opportunity to remove the lamp. These sales are planned weeks or months ahead, and you don't leave an heirloom that's so important to you for that long. It would not surprise me if some friend or distant relatives asked about the lamp after the estate sale, and they realize that something worth a big chunk of change sold for peanuts, and they're pissed. Especially when they start asking for money. You know it's got nothing to do with sentiment. It's done, it's over, and OP has nothing to feel guilty about.